Hello, good morning, good morning. It's 10 o'clock, 10:16 to be exact, on June 29th, 2026. Today for me is day 4,903 days in a row of daily art. And yeah, it's going to be one of those streams. This is more of a reminder to myself than anybody else. And hopefully it helps other people. That would be great. And maybe you saw the title of the stream, The Vegetables and Exercise of Art. I could talk about this a lot because I think it's so important, but we're going to talk about three things that I remind myself of every single morning. I have this thing called my protocol that I do every morning. I won't get deep into that. It gets a bit crazy. Something built over a long period of time. But I always remind myself every morning of discipline, minimums, and consistency. I think it's what artists struggle with the most because it's hard to talk about. We want to talk about painting and color, drawing, and all this kind of stuff. And I really want to see more of my artwork. There we go. Less of me, more of the artwork. And my big boom mic thing. Can't get around it. It's going to be there. It's okay. It's okay. I would watch that guy stream, but he's got that mic thing in the way. Doesn't make any sense. Okay. So we'll start out with the art thing, and then we'll work our way into the thought thing. The most important, the more important than that. Oh man, I'm feeling it today. Weekend, celebrated a lot last night, feeling it today. Had a great time last night, but I'm really understanding where, older people would constantly tell me, well, I can't do that all night. Next day, I'll be hurting. Oh, I'm feeling it now. But it's good. It's good. I'm alive. I'm here. We're going to have a lot of fun because this painting is going really well. Is it dry? The white is definitely not set at all. I would think, my first layer a few days ago, definitely dry except for the very light colors. Yeah, traditional oil paints I'm working with. 140-pound watercolor paper. Coated on one side or both sides with PVA sizing, one coat. And I am focusing on, you can see my reference all the way up there at the top. And I'm not focusing on trying to copy the reference exactly, but I'm interpreting the reference all about shape. I did a previous live stream all about what I was trying to do with this and having a lot of fun with shapes and seeing what's there, yet interpreting it in a different way, simply and expressively, and trying to have fun with paint more than trying to make the paint look like that. Okay. And it's a lot of fun. It is so much fun when we can let go of that idea of it has to look exactly like the photo we're referencing or whatever we're looking at in real life. It's a lot of fun when we can kind of let that go and say, you know what? I just want to be a bit more expressive, a bit more abstract. I want to see what that's about. So this is my focal point, this hand here, and I'm feeling really good about the hand, and I don't think I need to touch it today. As I look at it, I'm thinking, you know what? I could leave this big chunk of green there. I don't feel like it pulls away from, my focal point. I don't feel like it's distracting in any way. I can feel like this difference in light, how it's kind of fading from, these fingers up into the hand a little bit. And it gets to that green. It's really pretty. Just beautiful. I'm really liking that. I love the difference in texture of the back here of that figure. Where it feels like we have the hand and we have this, and there's that textural difference really makes a big separation between the two. I don't mind even, this kind of haphazard understanding of the top area It's like a quick, just crazy brush strokes to indicate that there's light happening. So I think where I'm going to go next, where probably the most needing for resolution, resolving shapes, is this hand here. Really needs help, because even this hand and even these little marks here are pretty interesting in a way. Like they have interest to them and they're not distracting. But this is, you know, even the fingers all the way down, a little bit distracting. So I need to resolve that a bit. Okay. And while I work through this, drawing is always going to be part of it. Everything I do, I feel like everything we do with paint is going to be drawing related in a lot of ways. If you're representational, right? Which means basically, you know, I can represent something, but I don't have to represent it exactly. I feel like naturalist, if you say naturalism, you're getting more into this idea of an exact representation of what you're seeing. A little bit darker. Yeah. I don't have, you know, throughout this painting, the one thing I didn't do, a lot of the paintings I did before, I would always have this value chart next to my painting, because I love doing like compression and value ranges, but this painting, I'm not doing any kind of value range compression. Maybe a little bit. Maybe I'll make sure that I don't go too close to black on a lot of the painting, because I don't like to go like straight black in a lot of ways. It causes a lot of issues, especially with cat hair. I think we all know what I'm talking about there. Cat hair in your oil painting. We know what's up. Our dog hair, you know, our fur babies. But the one thing I am thinking about when I'm putting these colors down is a lot about saturation. But even more than that, edges. Edges, I'm really thinking a lot about edges. And the edges may be this kind of black box, if I could say that, like this kind of unknown thing for a lot of artists. But they are so much fun to deal with, to really transition between different edges, to recognize, you know, a really sharp edge versus a lost edge, you know, and put those guys on a perspective or a spectrum. I love putting everything on a spectrum. It really kind of brings this nebulous idea of art and art making into a more practical sense. So on one side, we have super sharp edges of the spectrum. On the other side, we have lost edges. And when we can do that, when we can squint down and look at our reference, and when we know it'll be somewhere around there, we can find those sharp edges, we can find those lost edges, and then we can decide to push those in certain ways. Decide to push them into either more sharp or more soft, depending on the focal point and how we want to bring attention to things. Definitely. Hey, Lee. Hey, cat hair adds structural integrity to paint. Yeah, I could like weave it in there. You know, I should probably make like a canvas out of cat hair and paint on that. Like that would be my style, right? Love my cats. You know, just keep combing them until I get enough, and then I can like form it into a canvas, gesso that thing up, paint on it. Man, I think I got a new product. Should sell it, make a ton of money. Cat hair paintings. But I'd probably have to paint cats on cat hair paintings, I'm sure. I'm sure. But welcome, Lee. Welcome to the stream. So as I'm working on this, please ask questions, interrupt me at any time. I love answering questions and going off in tangents. My friend Pam, she always yells at me, stay on topic, Chris, talk about what you're doing, stay with that. But I don't know. I always kind of run off into these wonderful questions I get. And I do love that. And I'll go back to what I'm doing as I'm talking about it. And And the one thing I'm thinking about right now, if we're going to talk about a little bit of practical stuff with artwork, is this idea of neutralization of colors. We love talking about colors, and I'll get back to the major topic of this stream in a bit. We're going to talk about discipline, minimums, and consistency. The fun stuff to talk about. And everybody's like, oh, geez. I want to know the how of painting itself, not how to get to it. I don't know. Maybe a lot of people are interested in it, and I'm just being facetious. Is that the right word? Or that, I don't know. Anyway, almost everything that we see in real life is going to be neutralized. These, like, for instance, this is like a lemon yellow, cadmium red, even yellow ochre, which you know is like it's a pretty dull yellow. Most of the time, I have to neutralize it. I mean, what do you mean by neutralize, Chris? Neutralize as in take it closer to gray, something closer to gray, closer to the center of the color wheel. Anytime you see a color wheel, right in the center will be a tint, a tone, or a shade. And what does that mean, Chris? Well, when you tint something, you add white to it. When you tone something, you add gray to it. And when you shade a color, you add black to it. Tint, tone, and shade. Those are technical terms. I really don't use those very often. They're used with like paint manufacturing and everything. Like if you go to like Gamblin's website, they'll have all those their colors. You can look at them in tint, tones, and shades, how they transition when you add white, black, and gray to them, which is pretty nice. I do like that. I like the way they do that. I don't use their paints anymore. They're a little bit too thick for me, but I do like how they do that on their website. So I'm always thinking about neutralizing colors because for the most part, what we look at in real life is going to be neutralized. It's not going to have this intensity. And that's not saying, you know, I'm talking about representing what I see closer to how I see it. And there's always a bit of that. So I'm neutralizing, but in certain places. See this like crazy yellow here, doing it there. Some places on the very bright light of the fingers, I'm keeping that yellow really intense, attracting as much attention as I can there. In those places, I'll keep that saturation high. You don't paint a lot of flowers. I do not. I don't. And yeah, you're saying that because relational to flowers, you think that there's a lot of intensity there. And I don't paint a lot of flowers, so I could challenge that, but then I'd probably be wrong if you paint a lot of flowers. Because you would think that there'd be a lot of intensity in there. So if I saw like a bouquet of flowers and they were in direct sunlight, I would think there would be a tremendous amount of intensity there. But if I was going for the exactness of them, I don't think you would reach lemon yellow or cadmiums right out of the tube, like a cadmium yellow or a cadmium red. Maybe you would. But then what you'll also notice, and I think you can maybe agree with me on this, is that in order to really show off the intensity of those flowers, you have to look at like the shadows and the grays that are part of that. Because if everything's intense, nothing's intense. Right? If everything's saturated, right? Like if you're doing Van Gogh, right? Van Gogh is like intensity everywhere. We don't see intensity as like an individual item being more intense than the other when we look at a Van Gogh painting. Like everything's just very bright and intense. A lot of Monet is like that. If you look at Monet's series of some kind of chapel or church that he did, look at all the grays in there. Like get that image and do like a color picker in Photoshop or something. You'll be amazed at how many grays are in there. Like you think it's so bright and then you go, wow, look at all these grays. And it's those grays, I think, that really prop up the intensity of all the other colors. I mean, master colorist will do that all the time. So I'm bringing like intensity down in a lot of ways, but to think about in my focal point to bring that intensity up so that it is where this painting shines, right? So thinking about it in that way, more in a compositional sense. I want you to look here, gray out all this other area, like down here at the bottom and behind the fingers here and over here, the green and grays of these arms, right? We're not looking at that. I don't want you to look at that. Look away. Make it gray. Oof. I'm a poet. Anyway, you're welcome. Sigh of Darkness. That's a good name. Whoa. It's intense. That's an intense name right there. I'm at a point where I can copy a reference well, but really struggle creating paintings from imagination when I don't have a reference telling me where shadows go and what colors to pick. Any tips? Copy a reference well, but that's a really good point. In like your painting career, and I was at a point, and I'll talk about this for a little bit. And I see your comments there, Lee. I'll get to them. This is really interesting because we all get to this point. I feel like, and it's different for everybody, but I feel like we kind of all start out in this aspect of painting or drawing where it's like, I just want to make it look like what I'm seeing, and that's the copy phase. And a lot of us will stay in that copy phase for the rest of our lives, our art careers, and that's wonderful. We don't have to move out of that. Like, we choose to get off the train at whatever stop we feel makes us happy, and that's wonderful. But for me, I want to move beyond that a bit. And there is one point, because being so influenced by games and comics and all of this wonderful art scene that is that, I love the idea of making up something out of my head and being able to paint it, right? But as I went into that kind of idea of painting in general, I decided I didn't like it. So I didn't move into that as much as I think a lot of other artists, right? But I do have some tips of it. And I think that's tip number one, is to understand ourselves a little bit more as far as like where you want to take that, like your imagination, if you want to take your imagination pretty far and think about, okay, I'm all about copying right now, but eventually I want to make paintings that are completely out of my head. And if that's where you want to go, that's fine, but also understand like you don't have to go down that route. I think, and the reason why I say that is because when being in galleries and stuff and being exposed to the public that's not in the art scene very often, many people that are not, looking at art all the time or art history, they really think that most of the paintings that are out there are kind of made up out of a person's head. And when we think about like old masterworks where they didn't have photos and things like this, they did have a lot of models sitting for them. I'm thinking like John Singer Sargent would have a lot of, and this is 1800s, would have a lot of models sitting for them. But then also when the models weren't there, he would put a mannequin down with like clothing and paint from that. So there was all that. So a lot of people think, oh, if you can't make it up out of your head, you're not a real artist. So determine whether or not you really want to do that. Number one. My second tip on that is, and I always do this, I put things on a perspective, right? So we're right here. We're copying directly from the photo. When we want to get to this point on this spectrum of imagination, we tend to also want to jump from here to there in one big leap, all the way to the end, straight from imagination. And that's good. I mean, like we could say, here's a blank canvas. I'm just going to go out of my head. A really good book for that I liked a lot is Nicolaides, The Natural Way to Draw. He takes you through some exercises where every day you make up a composition, and that composition's based on a memory. And it's just like a quick sketch, and it really gets you into that habit of thinking about what you did that day, or that like moment in a day that would reference a moment in the day, and you just make a quick sketch of it. And it's like that slow progression that we want to our major goal. All of these little points will get us there. So we don't have to jump all the way to imagination right away. And I think like what I'm doing here could be a really good example on like one of those steps to get to like imaginative realism, right? And what I'm doing here is I am translating my reference. There is a reference there. I'm making smaller changes to it. I'm leaning heavily on the drawing because it's hands, yes. But as far as color and value and edges, in a lot of that instance, I'm pushing it. More intense, less intense, compressing value ranges. So always translating in my head, like if I wanted to compress and get rid of like black out of something, anytime I see black in my reference, I would make it a lot lighter, or the vice versa. Anytime I see white, I want to make it a lot grayer. But thinking about artwork through the fundamentals like that and progressing down that line slowly, these smaller steps to move away from it, I think could be helpful. Now, I'm not a person that paints directly from my imagination at all, so take this with a grain of salt, right? But I think that's a really good way of doing it. Now, if you're a figurative artist and you paint from imagination, anatomy is huge. Gesture is huge, simplification of the figure, simplification of what you're doing, and thinking about how you represent complex objects and shapes in a simple way. We look at, like, if you go into comics and things like that, the difference between like Jim Lee and Madureira, one of my favorite artists. I'm probably saying his name really wrong. Like comic book artist. Wow, the finger goes way out here. That's fantastic. So yeah, hopefully that's helpful in little ways. I can come back to you if you have more questions. I don't paint, so Lee says, I don't paint a lot of flowers, but when they are the focus and you pick colorful ones, yeah, you need some paint right out of the tube. You're right that you don't want everything intense. Okay, they are intense. I need to paint some flowers. I need to try and paint some flowers, honestly. I think it would be, I'm kind of scared of them. Flowers are hard. You could paint flowers the rest of your life, and every single day you get in front of a flower and you're trying to paint it. You're like, I'm learning something new. I mean, there's so much subtlety there. And if you're painting from life, it's like, I only got so much time. I got to get to it quickly. These things are going to wilt. Yeah. It's a challenge. Pretty cool, though. Pretty cool. At Sight of Darkness, watch tutorials from game and movie concept artists. Yeah. I love the game concept artists that do like big expanse of like landscapes and stuff, like out of this world, sci-fi fantasy landscapes. Oh, they're so beautiful. They are so beautiful. There's some great classes on schoolism, schoolism, ISM, with Craig Mullins is in there. Folks, I forget his first name, Flwlkes, another digital artist. Digital art, I mean, that's like the place to go, really. You'll get a million tutorials in digital art that way. You could go to Artwad, which is really huge right now. I love Artwad because, I mean, it takes you through this like progression of steps. Like you start here and you go through a curriculum. I like that it's practical. It can be a little bit too stifling, I think, if you get too much into a curriculum, but still a really good resource. Really good resource. Hey, Matthew. Welcome. Welcome. Good seeing you again, as always. You lose realism when you invent everything. Yeah. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know the direct definition of realism. I think that's why I kind of just say representational all the time. See the drawing of this thumb. If I don't draw this thumb right, if I don't get these shapes right, it's going to look weird. It's going to distract away from my focal point. So simply putting it down, yet in a way that it looks accurate, it doesn't distract. That's the interesting thing about painting from imagination or drawing from imagination is you get to this mode of generalizing things in a simple way, complex stuff, figures, faces, hands, torsos, bodies, arms, everything figure related, perspective. I'm going to generalize this in a very simple way, but it's going to look accurate and it's going to have my own kind of style to it. I think that's one of the most interesting things about, this kind of like next level of art where you'll see an artist like Anne Gale or John Singer Sargent, Soroya, Ben Hope comes to mind, Alex Kanefsky comes to mind, uh, Phil Hale comes to mind, where there's this abstraction of what you're seeing into this like different realm, right? But you're like, okay, that's an arm, that's a hand, that's a face, that's an eyeball, but it's not, this tremendously detailed thing. It's just a bunch of paint. And you're like, how does that look like an eyeball? How does that represent an eyeball so well? And yet it's nothing. There's nothing there. Just a few strokes of paint. Yet I see, a hand with a ring on it. Thank you, John Singer Sargent, and your ridiculous ability. Ugh. I remember looking at one of his portraits at the National Gallery in London and just, going up close to this hand and seeing 5 strokes and backing away 10 feet and seeing a hand going up close, seeing like paint, backing up, seeing the finger with a ring on it, and then go, what? I don't get it. I don't understand. How does that translate? But that interesting translation that happens, simplicity to complexity in a very simple way is fantastic. Thank you for your insights. I really do appreciate it. Great. Good. Hopefully that's helpful. But there's a lot of things out there for artists today that want to, go to imagination, to make up things out of their head, make beautiful worlds and figures and character concepts. Yeah. The one thing I will say is I'll ask you to be careful upon, or at least recognize it for yourself. When we go down this route of imagination, because I've seen other artists be down it. I haven't gone down this. So this is, grain of salt and all that, bucket of salt, probably. There's this tendency for us to be so referential to the people that we love when we go down this way, the artists that we love, where we kind of lose ourselves, where we look at a particular artist. Like I could totally, like if I went into digital art, I mean, even in painting, I would look at Craig Mullins constantly and just go, if I could just copy Craig Mullins, that's what I'll do, and it'll be beautiful, right? Just love his work so much. But then there's a tendency where, people would look at it and go, are you Craig Mullins? Are you Chris Bevan? Who are you, right? What is your ideas for, this art thing? And from what my minimal information that I've heard about that industry, is for the most part, they want to see artists that can do the style that they have for their particular movie or game, but they also want to see artists that have their own sensibilities, which means who you are as a person. And this is one of those things where you don't work on style directly, but you work internally and you think about who you are as a person and what you like and what you dislike. And then that translates into your quote unquote style, something that is you, represents you completely. We're getting to subsurface scattering here on this thumb, which is wonderful. I am going to grab that, at least whatever I can of it. But try not to get to this point where you're a copy of someone else. Like we've stopped copying the photograph that we're working from up here, but now we're just copying Craig Mullins. You know, we can be an amalgamation of multiple different artists put in one that we love, and that could work. Or we say, you know, I'm going to take all of the interest that my life is that's outside of artwork, like where I was raised and my family, you know, the location that I'm in, my struggles, my happiness, everything that is me. And I'm going to bring that always into my artwork. Like, this is what I like. This is what I like to do. And be specific, be brave about it. Yeah, I like that Craig Mullins guy, but I really hate this part of Craig Mullins, whatever that is, you know. Or this game is cool and their art style is cool, but it could be so much better if they went this way. And then do that. No, I'm going to stick with my guns and do it the way that I want to do. Yeah. I think at some point we have to be a bit stubborn with who we are and then go for that. Okay. So the title of this stream is Discipline, Minimums, Consistency. Now, for all of us, regardless of what art we're going into, I think these three things, the trifecta, I think is the most important. You may roll your eyes on that, like, oh gosh, he's going to talk about habit building and everything else that I want to talk about. But I always come back to this. Like, I know for a fact that, you know, after 4,903 days of art every single day in a row, I know how important the habit thing is. And I've built up all this skill. And if I took a year off, I would have to rebuild up a ton of that skill. You just lose it. You lose it. And that's from experience, right? That is definitely from experience. So this consistency for me is super important. And I know that that is so important because I made the mistake of being off of, you know, not doing anything for like 5 years straight and then coming back to it and just feeling the detrimental weight of regret because I had lost a lot of ability, right? And we don't want to do that. And it is so easy with how busy all of our lives are to forget about these things. And it's more a reminder to me than you guys, honestly. I have to constantly remind myself. I only have like one neuron working in my brain, and that one neuron can only hold so much information at a time. So it's a constant reminder every morning. Discipline, minimums, consistency. So specifically, we're always going to run into times when we have to be disciplined with what we're doing. The days when no one's going to be helping us out. We're not going to be motivated. We're not going to feel well. Like today, partied a little bit too much last night, had a lot of fun with friends at game night coming over, right? And so I have to get up and have to say, yeah, you had your fun yesterday, but time to get to work. Time to work on this painting. You know you like this painting. You're having a great time with it. But you have to bring in that discipline. Tonight, right now, this morning is a time to bring in that discipline to get to it. And yeah, it's hard. but you can do it. You've done it for, all these days in a row. You can do it, Chris. We got this. So constantly like pushing myself and going, okay, I got this, having some empathy for yourself, but at the same time, saying reasoning to get up, to keep going regardless. And that's a hard word that a lot of us don't want to deal with. We don't want to deal with, someone on a stream, this Chris guy telling us we need to actually work hard on our artwork and show up when we don't feel like it. No, Chris, what are you talking about? We need to have a little bit more empathy. And if we don't feel good, it's okay if we take a week off. It's okay if we take a month off. Yeah. And if that's good for you, you do that. Fill into that. If that works, go for it. But there's a point where we have to say, okay, you've taken more than enough time off. Now it's just procrastination. And we have to understand that about ourselves. Like, I cannot tell you that. We have to figure that out. And we have to push. We have to push. That it will always come into it. I would love to get away from this whole discipline idea. But we have to push through. And it's, it isn't like, because we're talking about comic books and stuff like that. What is the terminology for Japanese artists that do manga, like mangakai, I think. And I've seen a lot of videos about like the crazy work ethic that they have, but also how detrimental it is to their body, their mind, their soul, just terrible for them because they're working themselves to death, right? To get these comic books out really quickly. So there's a perspective there that we need to respect. Always respecting who we are. And that's where minimums come in. Because it isn't always about like go hard or go home. Like, I hate that mentality. When I talk about discipline, being disciplined for something you love and that's something you want to progress upon. I am not talking in this kind of macho junk that many artists and people get into, where it's like, yeah, even if you're, half dead in the bed or something, you're still going to get to it. No. No, this is where you say, man, I'm feeling terrible today. It's awful. I don't feel like it. Everything's going wrong in my life. Okay, what can I do? And for me, my minimum is 30 minutes a day of something. It could be like simply just drawing my foot as I'm in bed, feeling terrible, or drawing from a photo that I took a month ago. I just do a crappy sketch for a half an hour, then I go back to sleep, right? I celebrate that. I go, oof, I got that done on a really hard day. Good job. Now back to sleep, right? This isn't a go hard or go home kind of mentality. This is empathetic, yet with a dose of discipline in it, Like, how can I be disciplined yet empathetic at the same time? And you can do it that way. Definitely. You can do it that way. And argue with me about it. If you don't feel the same, please, I want to hear your side of the story. Would love that. Lee says, there is a balance. Sometimes you have to take time off, and it's important not to beat yourself up for it. I'm not saying you don't have to be disciplined. Yeah. We have to find, like, this is an art game, right? I love calling it an art game. It kind of really pulls all of that stuff out of it. It kind of gets back to this moment of, it's supposed to be fun in a lot of ways. It's supposed to be one of those things that's uplifting in a lot of ways. And if our game, the rules that we play, that we determine for our game, we think about games in general. Like, tennis is more fun on a court. Games are fun with those rules. Like, if someone said, okay, I'm going to create this interesting game and I'm going to call it football, right? And it's just going to be this round ball that we're going to kick around in this random field, and we just kick it back and forth. Football. Well, yeah, it's not going to be this worldwide sensation that everybody gets upset about. There's no rules. But as soon as you apply rules to it, like American football, tennis, all these other sports, right? They're only fun because they have the rules around them. When we think about this art thing as a game, we start putting these rules to them, our own rules, right? For me, 30-minute minimum a day, every single day for the rest of my life. That's my rules. That keeps me going. That works for me. But you may come across this and go, no, I like doing like an art bender where I'm doing 20 hour days for a week, and then I'm off for a week, and then I do 20 hours days for a week, and then I'm off for a week. And then you establish the third part of this trifecta is that consistency. A consistency that works for you. And that is so important. The one thing that you must get right throughout all of this is consistency. If you consistently do something, you will improve at it. You will get better. You will progress. Even in the bad things, if you're consistently hurting your body with bad food and not exercising or whatever, consistently doing all these things, we know this. I don't have to tell you. Like, you go to the doctor and they'll repeat more vegetables, more exercise all the time. We know this. We consistently do the good things. We consistently do the bad things. That determines the trajectory of our life. If we're consistently playing a video game rather than working on our artwork, we'll definitely progress on that video game, and our artwork will be detriment from that. It won't progress, right? But you have the discipline. You use the minimums to help you get to that discipline, to help you push through that discipline and get to consistency, which is most important. So that's the trifecta that I run through every single morning. Discipline, where I need to take it. How can I use minimums to help me get to it, right? And then, am I consistent with this? What does my consistency look like? Lee says, I disagree. Art can be fun, but I think of it as being fulfilling, which means sometimes it's hard and not fun, but it can still be satisfying and fulfilling. Yeah. No, I don't. I think we're on the same. I agree with your disagree. Maybe I was saying that incorrectly. Art can be fun. Yeah. But I think of it as being fulfilling, which means sometimes it's hard and not fun, but it can still be. Yes, actually, that's a really good use of the terminology. The language there is really good. Like, I have right behind this camera that I'm looking into, I have two sketches up there. One was done at 3 a.m. in the morning before my kidney transplant. One was done the day after I got my kidney transplant. Actually, no. Yeah. The day after I got my kidney transplant, I was in the hospital bed. I did another sketch. That stupid thing you have to breathe into when you're in the hospital. And I spent I've never spent that much money on framing something, but those I framed. Those are the most important little pieces of little crappy sketches that I did my entire life. And they're always there to remind me of how fulfilling art can be through that discipline. Was it a great time? Hell no. It was awful. Do I feel revitalized, really good about myself every time I look up there? I'm like, yeah, I did that. Man, feels really good. Yeah, feels fantastic. Not sure about that thumb. Really not sure about that thumb. Oof. Fingers in perspective will always look weird. Got to get the drawing perfect. And even sometimes you get the drawing perfect and then you're like, that looks like a stumpy finger. It doesn't look like it's in perspective. The drawing is incorrect on it, especially where that knuckle is, like right where that transition needs to come back here, I think. The thumb should stop about right there. I'm not going to get too deep into that. What I'm going to do is make sure that it's not distracting. Let's move on with some of the hand, though. But yeah, I agree with you, Lee. Fulfilling. It's a good word, because when you move through that discipline, consistency, you push yourself to a point, it does become more fulfilling than this kind of always needs to be fun, right? Fulfillment. I think it's a bit stronger word in a lot of ways. Finding what fulfillment means for us, individually. But honestly, I don't think I want to go too far in there. I think that's good. I think talking about that's pretty good. So you're saying I need to get a kidney transplant to be as good as you? Got it. No, I'm pretty sure Lee. Oh, JK, yeah. You're kidding on that one. Oh, that's funny. Yes. You're not a real artist unless you get a kidney transplant. Like that's like extreme go hard or go home mentality. Oh, that's funny. That's super good. Yeah, like, our own individual experiences of this wonderful life that we're living is going to challenge us in our own ways. It could be physical, it could be mental. I mean, but honestly, we all know that eventually it's going to get physical, right? I always like to say to people, and this is getting a bit heavy, but I don't know if you guys know this saying, but the only true constants in life are death and taxes, right? Very pessimistic, very deep kind of saying that you hear, idiom, one of those idioms. But I always say, oh, you forget one. There's three. There's taxes, the degradation of your health, and then death. Because we forget about that. And I say that because I've known so many people that are like, oh, I'll wait till I retire to do what I would love to do. No, do it now. Because by the time you retire, you're not going to be able to get around like you would love. Things are not going to be working the way you want, unfortunately. All right, things happen. S happens. Ship with a P happens. You know what I'm talking about. You're welcome. Look at me trying to be like PR with my language here. Definitely. This hand's going to be interesting. Lee. All right. I unfortunately have to head out. Glad I could catch one of your live streams. Yeah. Thanks for showing up, Lee. I appreciate your commentary. If you're still there, there's like a lag between when you comment and when I actually see it. So, but thank you so much for showing up. Yeah. Whatever ones you can catch, I'll be here around sometime in the morning, every morning. So I'll see you in the future. And I appreciate your responses. You're challenging on my thinking. That's how we get better as individuals, is having this kind of open discourse where we can talk like emotionally intelligent individuals and not get so upset about different opinions, and say, oh, okay, you feel that way. I disagree. And that's totally cool. As long as we're being nice to each other and talking to each other in a respectful manner, I think it's fantastic. I think it's friggin-tastic. Okay, so this hand is going to be odd to do. I know right away as I'm starting to paint it. Of course, I wasn't thinking about this when I chose this image, but it's a very flat palm, right? And when we look at a palm, like my hand here, in like a photo or video or something, we're going to look at this and we're going to say, yeah, it's a hand. It's got all those bumps and everything. I can see like where the pads and stuff are, and the bulk of my thumb is coming out of the major palm, and if I flatten it out even more, it doesn't look weird. But as soon as we take, and I know this only from doing hands and body parts all the time, but as soon as we flatten it out, we become like dependent upon all of these subtleties within that flatness to save form. Those subtleties, what get us all the time, what get me all the time. where I'm like, okay, how can I be subtle with this? Show or indicate those transitions without being totally copying from the photo. Because sometimes if it's not copied exactly, like if a finger or hand or a body part is in a different perspective coming right at you, or bent in a weird way or something, some kind of expressive movement, it looks perfectly fine when we look at photos. Like our brain looks at it and translates all this minimal little tiny bits of information and says that looks good. But as soon as we paint it, there's a loss of translation that happens unless we go deep into like exact copy from the photo, and it becomes more difficult. So that palm, these fingers, gonna be interesting. And this is one of those things where we could get into what are we gonna hide behind paint and more expressive brushwork, and what do we think that we need to really dive deep into and figure out that subtlety so it looks right. And yeah, that I wouldn't feel bad about, and I wouldn't feel bad about saying, okay, I'm not going to paint that because it's going to look weird. And I'm going to try and generalize it enough where it just doesn't attract any attention. Totally fine with that. I always talk about the story when me and a friend of mine were painting a landscape. And then there was this stop sign that was right in front of us on its edge. Like, when you look at a stop sign, we see stop, we see this octagon, it's big red, definitely a stop sign. But when you turn it 90 degrees, it's just a stick. And if you look at a photo of that stick in front of the entirety of your landscape, you're like, oh, that looks like some kind of sign that's there. I can see it. But you do a painting of it and people are like, what's that black line that you put in the middle of this landscape? It doesn't make sense. There are things that just look okay in photographs and in life that when we paint, like the translation is lost. It is lost. And so sometimes it's better just to ignore it and just get away from it. I asked my friend Michael Orrick once, I said, hey, how do you deal with those fluffy trees? I call them fluffy trees. These are the trees that have like a billion little tiny leaves, and they turn into like clouds of leaves, like a swarm of leaves. No structure whatsoever. They're fluffy. They have less structure than clouds do. And I was like, hey, dude, you're been doing landscapes, beautiful landscapes for most of your life. How do you deal with those? He says, I don't. I avoid them like the plague. I'm like, there you go. Okay. Fantastic. I replace them with another tree in my mind. You can do that. We're artists. We can move buildings, move mountains. I don't need to paint that mountain there. Let's move it over. Look at Albert Bierstadt. Bierstadt. Love that name. I love the awe of his landscapes. I think a lot of the digital artists that do concept art for landscapes, if they don't know Bierstadt, I would be very surprised. I know that Craig Mullins knows Albert Bierstadt. Looked at his artwork for years, I'm sure, to do his digital landscapes. Amazing. Absolutely amazing. But this is a person that said, no, I want to make this landscape even more awe-inspiring than it is. I want the drama within it. And the current configuration of the earth as I see it doesn't give me that drama. So we're going to adjust it. We're going to change it. That's how powerful we can be with this art thing. It's pretty fantastic. Okay. Let me back up on this hand. Yeah, just look at it digitally. See that? You know, I added this blue here, this kind of lighter color, because I'm seeing that within the palm. You know, it's this value that gets a little bit lighter. I squint down, I see it kind of dark here, lighter there. Totally flip that palm so that it's like this is more concave than convex. Doesn't work. Just subtle change within that value. Doesn't work, Chris. It was better when it was flat. Better when it was flat. So let's see if we can darken this up again, just subtly. You know, focus more on the change in saturation rather than the change in value. I think could help that out. We can turn a form. Usually, you know, this is the job of value. It gives us the fullness of a form. It gives us shadow shapes, and that's what describes the form of any object. So that's the purpose of value. Doesn't matter the color or saturation of that color we put on there. If we get the value right on, it will look like a hand or a finger or a cylinder or a square or I'm sorry, cube, not a square. Right? And it's all based on the value. You know, saturation and hue, specifically saturation, can come in and play a small part of that transition, but only in very subtle scenarios. I mean, you're not going to be able to get like the transition that I get up here with this large, and I could be totally wrong on this, like, you know, really bright to really dark value change. Can we do that in just saturation alone? I don't think so. Super saturated to very gray, but have the same exact value, I still think it would be very flat. But when we were looking at in these very subtle value changes, we can bring all the value into one scale, but change how the saturation looks. And to explain that and kind of help my brain understand that a little bit better, let me get my value chart up here. And this is always fun to do. I love doing this because this is another way of we can kind of progress away from the photo. But if I were to put this value down, which is probably right here, yeah, that's pretty close to that gray. As I squint, it's probably a little bit darker than that gray, so let's lighten it up just a tiny bit. Yeah, that's right there. Hopefully you can see that. Like those two values, there's a purple and like a very warm gray. Those two values are exactly the same. Like if I turned this whole screen, your whole screen, to gray, I don't think that would disappear completely. I don't think you would see the value change. Maybe a little bit lighter. Let's see. Now that gets a bit too light, right? Oh no, maybe it's closer. Not sure. It gets really hard to see once we get very close to it. But as I look at this, what I'm seeing is not like a bigger value change, but a saturation hue change. And we can utilize that. Like we can make this whole hand the same value range, right? But affect how it tricks our eye to feel things coming at us and things pushing away from us with saturation and hue changes. It's a very subtle thing. I remember reading something, I think it was in Van Gogh, The Life, which is a really good book about Van Gogh. Big book. Like, I couldn't read the actual book, even though I have the actual book. I did the audiobook version. Fantastic book. But I remember something in there, whereas his history of, you know, the Impressionists and how they were thinking about color in a completely different way. And there was one side of the argument was all about value and this kind of tonalist idea. And I think Millet was one of those where it's nothing but grays and dark and light. It was all about white and black and grays creating form within just value alone. And then there was on the other side of the argument were artists that were saying, no, we create form through color changes. And we can do that. And you have one set of artists on one side of the fence and one set of artists on the other side of the fence, and they're both right, just in different ways. I prefer the more value oriented approach with blacks and whites and grays, or the more color oriented approach with that. I feel like the color oriented approach with changing like how form looks within saturation and hue is the hardest route. And I think even those artists would still use value in a lot of ways. Like value is kind of king when it comes to that, or queen. The top. Get rid of like binary concerns there. Yeah. But that's why I'm talking about this with the palm. Keeping it similar value range. Focusing on subtle transitions in there with color and saturation rather than trying to really change that value up, because I think it could be problematic. And this is going to be too light, I bet. No, it's not. But I love that there's these greens in there. So if I can mix up a green, oof, not that green. Oh, I need more white. Story of an oil painter's life. Always buy a bigger tube of white. It's kind of like every color gets filtered through white. Could be a bad habit of myself, though. Maybe one day I'll try some paintings where I remove white altogether and see how, what I can do with just changing the value range by using just lighter colors, right? It'd be kind of fun, challenging, and fun. That is way too green, too intense. So grayish green. How do we make green less intense? We add red. We add its opposite to it, or we can add black and white, right? I'm going to try with red. So I'm going to go CAD red. It's going to darken it a little bit. Perfect. Look at that. Darken it a little bit and grade it out so we get closer to this whole purplish value range. That's the wonderfully difficult thing about color, is every time you have a pile of paint that you're mixing with, that you're adjusting as you're going. And anytime you add anything else into it, you're always going to change the three things: hue, saturation, and value. Hue less than the others, value, saturation more than the others, more often. Not really liking that. It's going to be hard. Oh, I'm scared of this hand because I love this hand, but that palm. The palm's going to be tough. And I can feel myself falling into this, like falling back into this understanding of detail. Like, okay, this is going to be hard to represent. So I fall back to detail, fall back to copying from the photo. And I want to try and not do that. Like, I want to translate what I'm looking at in a way that it looks good. It's not distracting. We can tell that it's a palm of a hand that is kind of flattened out. But it's also simplified, like a simplification of that in a way where, yeah, it's a palm flattened out. And that's all it says, but it's paint first. I see the paint first, and then I'm like, oh, palm. Okay. Depending on how far I am away from the painting. It's challenging, hopefully rewarding. So what I'm doing here, let's get practical on that. I always have to jump back to the practicality of things because that's where we have to move through. I mean, we're just if we don't get back to this kind of like practical understanding of how to do something, how to move through it, where we translate all this language into something that is objective. I always like Richard Schmidt's book, Alla Prima too. There's one part of it where he's talking about the same thing, like this kind of practical approach to painting in a lot of ways. And it's not the only way to paint, of course, but he says, okay, you want to paint this child that has a particular expression on their face. Well, that's a drawing issue. We have to think about, well, got to get all the subtleties that's happening within the eyes and the brow and the mouth, to get that expression that we want. It's a drawing issue. So even though we're holding on to this emotional idea that we want to represent, it still comes back to the practical idea of drawing issue. So I'm here, I'm looking at this palm. It's a subtlety that I need to figure out within all about value and more temperature than hue, saturation. Honestly, I think it's all like the same, similar value, small changes in value, all very gray, not very saturated. So similar value, similar saturation. So it's more like temperature. Is it warmer? Is it cooler? Very subtle things. But I'm thinking about it in that way. So moving to color in that way, then I'm also squinting down to simplify it all as well. And I think I'm asking the question, was it better when it was all just one purple thing and generalized into one flat shape? Was it better there? We can figure that out easily by just painting over the whole thing. One big shape again, going back to the beginning if you want to. But that idea of moving through practical language, taking that emotional idea, these like subjective feelings that we have, it doesn't look right. It looks wonky, this kind of language that we use that doesn't really translate well into this, what to do to make it look not wonky or make it look right, whatever that means. If we can move that through our own practical language, that's where we have like this objective path to move through. And we're like, okay, well, I'm going to try this. Even though it might not get me there, at least I'm on, I've taken a choice down a particular route on road on this journey, and it's going to take me somewhere. Instead of just throwing my hands up and saying, I have no idea what I'm doing here, and I'm just going to start a new painting, right? And I think that's hard for a lot of individuals. A lot of artists that I've taught, the art is about that emotional feeling. Like that's the way that they love to move through this art game. And I think that's fantastic too. And I'm teaching people and I'm trying to bring them into like this practical idea of things, through the language of that. And they say, no, Chris, you're going to kill it for me. If I start getting too practical with it, it's not going to be fun anymore. And you could say to me, you could say to anybody, no, I would love to just sit here and get emotional about it and very subjective and move through my paintings in a very emotional way. Like some kind of battle or something like that. Like I'm really struggling with, these emotions, and some days I win and some days I lose, and never apply any kind of like practical understanding to it. And I'll be happy the rest of my life. And that would be great too. But for myself, I need to apply some practicality to it. And that's who I am, like this kind of objective person. I'm the guy that can paint like this, can paint very detailed as well, but also love programming a website too. That's me. I can have that duality as a person. And I think it's wonderful that we all can kind of determine that who we are on each individual day, and it's different between days. Just fantastic. Absolutely fantastic. If you're familiar with Gerhard Richter, love Gerhard Richter's work. So, a German artist, 70s, 80s, where he was really big, still amazing today, does still painting, making beautiful paintings. He was well known for two styles of painting that were completely different from each other. And he shows these paintings all at the same time. One painting style is photorealism, super, super detailed photorealism, like blurry photos, intentionally looking at how life becomes more real when it's not very exact, but also through this lens of a photo and getting that perfect photo blur. So exactly the same as a blurry photo, but saying at the same time, life is more interesting and more real when it's not perfectly in focus, you know. And I'm not saying it in good language that does those paintings justice. But then also he was this artist that would do these massive paintings and have this huge, like 10-foot squeegee, like would put down all this paint on this huge squeegee and just run it across the whole painting. And then do it again, going in a different direction, again, a different direction, and just focusing on this like random abstraction that would happen, almost abstract expressionism. Maybe it was abstract expressionism, not sure. But being able to hold both of those at the same time, both of those ideas, and to be well known for both of them, fantastic. That's us. We can be one person in one day and then a different person the next. I can paint very expressively one day and then the next day say, no, I'm going to get super detailed. I don't feel like it. I don't feel like doing that craziness. Yeah. Thank you, spammer, for interrupting. I had to ban you again. Just a bunch of bots out there. Hey, there's 3 people watching this stream. Maybe they'll go to this stupid.com. I shouldn't even mention them. Just not even give them the time of day. They're not even there. Non-existent. Probably better. Okay. I think the major thing with this palm is the thumb separation in the small value change that is right here. There's a, let me put it down. There's a form, well, a line that's describing the roundness here. And then there's a meaty side of this side of the palm. But this kind of dark area, this darker area that separates those two, I think might be the most important part of this palm. And even though I'm trying to be expressive, this does come back to drawing. It always wants to come back. And right here too. So this is, we have super bright, we have a transition into shadow. It gets a bit darker and then it lightens up a bit more. So let's darken this up here. I mean, I haven't dealt with that area. It's still transparent from my initial strokes. So maybe that will help it out. I'm ceasing to think about the exact color here, and I'm just thinking about subtle value transitions or temperature transition that looks like a value transition. simplifying because I'm squinting down. Every time I'm looking at this palm, I'm squinting my eyes. In fact, I'm not even moving my head that much. When I get very detailed or intense into a drawing, and I don't know if you guys have experienced this as well, but if you're like drawing a figure in person or a still life or something, like the only thing moving on me is my hand and arm and my eyes, but my head will sit very still. So I can kind of flick my eyes back and forth while they're squinted. And I don't get any difference. Like if I'm moving my head left and right, I'll get some kind of difference in what I'm seeing, especially in person. When you're painting a figure in person, that's important because, moving your head back and forth will always transition or change what you're seeing in some ways. Oh, man. Like that value change isn't that great. Like I see it digitally and like the contrast is greater than what I see here. Like I'm squinting down and it's not that great. Not that much different. It's just, see, I knew. Like this is not looking right. Let me try a couple more areas to make it a little bit darker. This kind of Terminator that's happening with the shadow shape there, where we're getting into the form shadow that really says to us in light very subtly, this is my transition into shadow, and this is all the bulk of the shadow. Oof. Okay. I want to darken up this blue area that I've added in. I want to keep it cooler like it is, closer to blue, but I think that value, all the same value range, flatten it out as much as I can. And I think it would look better that way. I could be totally wrong. But doing it simply, Chris. Got to do it simply. I want to do it simply. Try not to overwork it. Just one stroke, the whole thing, this whole area. Being way too timid. And it's so incongruent with this wrist. And I love we're transitioning into the wrist and the arm here, and it's very light. No, I don't like it. I don't like the palm at all. I don't like it all. Get back to some freshness. Sometimes this is the best thing we can do sometimes. I mean, John Singer Sargent knew this. Just scrape it off. Yeah, it didn't work. The freshness isn't there. It's overworked. Let's start back from something that's there, and then we'll respond to what was scraped, right? Don't be afraid to do it. It's that fear of, oh, I've done so much work on this. I don't want to forsake all that work that I've done. But at the same time, these kind of changes that we make with our paintings, this braveness that's there, is what really takes us to the next level of our artwork, honestly. I really believe that. So I'm going to go for a much lighter value over the whole palm. Really bring it more congruent with that wrist. As soon as I saw that wrist, I knew I was getting too dark. And yes, I could go over that with a lighter value, definitely. But I want that freshness of it. And paint put down confidently right away with the strokes that need to be there each and every time. looks so much different than something that is worked up to that. There's an artist, David Chivello, Schivelllo. Another artist, similar but different, Carol Marine. Her and her husband, I believe, our partner, created dailypaintworks.com, where you can show all your artwork. Fantastic. I was part of that for a while. It's actually pretty nice. But these are artists, David Chivello and Carol Marine, that like count their brushstrokes and say, look at this figure, look at this still life. I want to do it in 16 brushstrokes, just simply. It's a very, not arbitrary, but kind of like made up kind of thing, where it's just like pushing a bit too far in that area. But you can't deny, like, some of the paintings look gorgeous. Love the paintings. So fresh, so pretty. Yeah, gorgeous paintings that way. So simply done. Like, you'll look at eggs that usually, like with Carol Marine, she'll do these eggs that usually have like really soft curves to them, and they'll just be like an octagon, just straight, everything simplified into straight lines intentionally. It's a stylistic concern that they came up with that they really like. I think it's great. Green. I want green. Let's go into blue with yellow ochre. Greenish. Greener than this purple. No, not green enough. Ultramarine blue and lemon. I think that's lemon. I can't, lemon yellow or something close to it. And then white to grade out. Because that's lighter. It goes back. No, I need it. Maybe let's just blue. Just go blue. You did the wrist blue and the going into the arm blue, Chris. Why are you tightening it up right now? Just put it down. Put it down. You see it? Put it down. Go for it. Put it down. Simply have some courage within that. Go for it. Go for it. Bam. Sometimes, even if it's not done well, if it's done with confidence, it looks better. Explain that one. I don't know why. I don't know why. What? I foresee repainting this palm like 5 times. That may be in my future. That really may be my future. And that would be fine. Hopefully I learn a bunch from it. Like Lee said before, more fulfilling than fun. I do love that language. That's really good. Fulfillment. We can get the fun when we want it, but sometimes fulfillment is best. And that thumb is like completely gone now. Scraped it out. Like all of this kind of, we don't even know what's happening there. Yeah, it was because I put lighter color over a darker initial strokes. Can I get back to the paper if I really scrape hard, like dig into it? I have no problem with like removing the top layer of paper to get back to something that's whiter if I can with a palette knife. Oof. Scrape. Give me some sandpaper, someone. Got to be careful with that though. Don't aerosolize your paint into the air by sanding it. Okay, I'm talking about just a bunch of random stuff. How long have I been on this stream? Let's see. Or been painting. Always got to look at my phone. Hour and 41 minutes. Let's go a little bit longer with this. I don't feel like I've resolved anything right now with this palm. Like it's just giving me some trouble without any resolution. Let's get something that maybe resolves this a little bit better. It's too purple, too dark. Let's gray it out, lighten it up there. Darker shape. Simply put, I like the idea of trying to leave some of that brighter purple that I left after scraping down again. You know, keeping that paint open. I love that word when talking about like transparency, that you scrape back into it so that you can see through the paint onto the white of the paper. It feels open. It has an openness. It's airy. It's very airy. Love that idea. And I never really realized how much that can change a painting or be interesting in a painting, to play with that openness of it, that transparency within it. Not in the sense of like glazing and transparency, but scraping into an alla prima painting so that you can see the paper through that thin paint. Never really played around with it that much. Only recently have I really kind of got into it. And it's really changed the way I paint. You know, finding that extra push where you can get a glow of the paint that you can't get anywhere else with that, it gives you like another level, another gear to kind of shift into when you need it. Oof, that one stroke. I really like that one stroke. It changed that whole area. That feels good. Whenever you're putting something down, like you're working on a painting, like maybe you're like falling asleep, you're like, just going through the motions. And I've done that before for months and months, kind of going through the motions. And then one day you wake up and you go, man, what have I been doing this whole time? But then every now and then you'll work on your painting and you'll put something down and you're like it was a note that just rang true, like Steve Houston would say. Like it just rings true. I love when he says that. It's like, whoa, that one stroke or that one little bit changed the entirety of the work, or this one section, this one small shadow shape gave that entire form or the entire hand all of its form and all of its understanding all at once. Beautiful, man. That's the part of art that we live for, right? That's those fantastic moments that just feel really good. You know what it reminds me of? And this is completely random and off topic. It reminds me of golf. My brother's probably listening to this right now going, oh, he's talking about golf. What does this crazy guy know about golf? I know nothing about golf. When I was like 16, my first job was working at a golf course. And I played golf when I was really young. Sorry, bro. But there's these times when you're on the tee. This is where you start at the beginning of a hole. Like you know, if it's a par 4 and it's really long or something like that, you get out your driver and you get to kill the ball, make it go really far. Yay. And that is fun. But every now and then you'll just, most of the time when I would hit the ball, it would feel like I was hitting a rock, like a 2-pound rock. And you'd feel this like shock go all the way up through the club you're holding, and it felt like you just hit something bad, and it just didn't feel good. You're like, ugh. And of course, you watch the ball, and it'll go right into like right to the right or right to the left, and you're off in no man's land, and you're like, yep, that's what it felt like, exactly like that, like the horrible shot that it was. But then every now and then, you would catch it just right. Like your swing and everything would just be perfect. And it was like you didn't even hit a ball. Like there was nothing there. It was just air. And you felt like a little tug on the end of the club. And then as you look up at the end of your swing, your ball is like traveling straight as an arrow and like a million miles an hour, exactly where you wanted to go. And you're like, oh, that's why I'm playing this game. That's what happens with when we're painting. Sometimes we just knock it out of the park, right? Those moments where it could be just a small moment in a painting, one or two strokes, and it's like that did it, done. That whole area or the whole painting's done because of those two strokes, right? It's a good feeling. Doesn't happen very often, but it reminds us why we're playing the game. I'm going to shorten this thumb up. I'm going to focus a bit more on the drawing of that thumb. And one thing that you can notice here that I'm doing, I do this a lot. I'm faking it. Yeah, I fake it a lot. But we don't have to always just put strokes down like, we're doing this with our brushes, like not thinking boop, boop, boop. We're painting the wall and it's all vertical or it's all horizontal or it's all the same angle. Painting, pop, 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 pop. It's like we're not really talking. We're just doing a voice like this and not thinking. Sometimes we'll see, something like this thumb, and we can make thinner strokes that go around the form, like against the form, like you're making a curve with your brush and you're saying that's a thumb and this is what it feels like if I was touching that thumb with my actual hand. If I was there, like running my finger across this or my brush across the thumb, it would go at this angle. It would feel circular in space. It would be very weird because I'm touching someone's thumb with my brush. But that circular motion describes so much more. We can begin to understand the forms a bit better. Like even in this palm, it's kind of moving down. There's a concave idea that's happening with, the meat of that thumb there, right? Goes down and then flat and then out again. Like we're describing, like it's cross contours, right? And the book by Nicolaides, Natural Way to Draw, really great practice within that. I like that book. I really like that book. I think it's one of those kind of sleeper books. What are you talking about? I have no idea what I'm talking about there. People or a lot of artists, I think, look at that book. They look at the drawings in the book, and most of the drawings are absolutely terrible in that book. They're not well done, and they're not like, oh, look at these finished drawings, they're so beautiful, and the purpose of them is not to be that. So it's one of those books that we'll put down right away because it doesn't have pretty drawings in it. The exercises are not about that. The exercises are about understanding, not outcome. And that's, what I think is really interesting about that book. It goes through a very structured way of drawing and paint, or drawing specifically, and painting. I think he gets into some form with paint, watercolor, and stuff like that. Love the exercises in there. Really kind of expanded my idea of form in general, like how to visualize the three-dimensionality of a form in your head and actually feel it more than being able to actually paint it or draw it. Like that feeling of form is really cool. And the other interesting thing about that book, Nicoletti's Natural Way to Draw, is if you read the synopsis, like the very beginning of it, he didn't write that for he could finish the book or even start the book, but all of his students loved what I was doing so much that they created the book for him after he died. And they didn't know what particular drawings that he intended for certain parts of the book. So they just pulled from all the students that were doing his exercises and used those. So after seeing that, I was like, oh, okay. So this isn't about, the beauty of the drawings, but more about the understanding than anything. It's a good book. Good book. Check it out if you get a chance. Go through some of the exercises. It's one of those books, it's back in the day when this understanding of learning was you get passed through this corridor of learning, and you have, before you can touch this, you have to do these 5 things first. And it's maybe it's too structured. It's so structured that it's easy for individuals to get lost, lose all motivation for art whatsoever, because I would love to do this type of painting, but I can't yet because I have to do X, Y, and Z before I can get there. Some artists love that, like that deep structure. If I get through it, it's a better chance of me being better in some way. But then other artists just get stifled, so you got to be careful with that. You got to be careful. Okay. I'm at a point right now where I'm losing energy, losing focus on this. And it feels like a good place to stop. Yeah, scraping that palm out really helped it, honestly. Scraping it out, going back for simplicity. It's going to be all about that thumb. It's going to be about this shape here. This is going to be a reminder for tomorrow, Chris. That shape. And then how it moves, it continues that, but that roundness flows into the palm there. Gets larger here. Larger, larger. And it gives that separation between, the bottom area and maybe a bit about this. Can't really see those marks. I like those marks too. I think this is the only most round part of this entire palm. The rest of it is just really flat, just flat, flat, flat. I think this is the only area that's going to describe that this is a palm and not the top of the hand. Maybe a little bit here as well, but that's what it's going to be all about. And also, thinking about the same kind of curves happening within these fingers a little bit. I love this finger, how it's like, bright on one side and the reflected light on the other. And it's just got a terminator right down the center. Yeah, that's going to be fun to do. Same thing there. That roundness, and then keeping the rest of it flat. Getting the length of that thumb correct, I think, is going to be very important, because it should stop about right there, honestly. And the thickness of it, the transition within the thickness of this thumb is going to be really, really important. Whenever we have perspective on body parts, it's especially on fingers, because fingers are either, when they're out, your fingers are just straight out like this, and then they're pointing directly at you. They just change into nothing. Like, you look at my hand pointing directly at you, these fingers pointing directly at you. It's just, there's nothing there. It's just a bunch of like circles, and that's it. And when we look at it in photography, Like this camera here, when I'm doing this to you, and even, you know, when you're looking at it in a very, let me bring it back so it's not as, get bigger on that. So it's not as, let me do it this way. I went more focus basically. Pointing directly at the camera, right? That finger pointing directly at the camera. If we drew that, it's like a nub. It wouldn't be much different than that. So you're like, wait, is it a knuckle or a finger? When I'm doing this here, you're thinking, what are you talking about, Chris? I mean, it looks like a finger being pointed at me. But when we translate it into drawing graphite and paint or whatever, a lot of times that translation is lost because all these little subtle changes that we notice as humans, because we've been looking at fingers and faces and noses, heads and arms and feet all of our life, and that subtlety says so much, and we lose a lot of that in the translation. It's not got off the rails yet. I'm so glad I scraped that out. So much better scraping it back out, getting back to that freshness. You know, there's a lot of this that at a point in this painting where I'm going to say, this is done. I may even say like, all this is done, like not even touch it again. And it's at this point where there's a part of me, it's like one part of me saying that's unfinished, and the other part of me saying that's expression, you know. And I'm struggling as, you know, this practical kind of person, like how to bring that language where we say this looks unfinished on this side, where we always are thinking unfinished because we're moving through this idea that we're always copying from something. It's got to look so exact what we're doing that if it's not, unfinished is the word that comes up. But then there's this other side where we think expression. I want to be expression. I want to generalize. I want to say paint first and then that area second. And finding the language between those where we can get practical with it and say, it definitely doesn't say unfinished. It says simply done. Yeah. That's the area I want to live in with this painting. Shapes, simply done shapes expressively. Okay. Thank you so much for being here, for all of your comments, for dealing with, and you know, what I'm doing here right now is I'm thinking about something else as I'm talking to you, because I always talk about my website at the end, and what I want to do is just waste your time more here. That's what I want to do. Is this it? Oh, that is it. Okay, that's what I want. Really big. Good job, Chris. I'm trying to promote myself, and it's so hard as an artist sometimes. Why are you focusing way back there? Focus on me. Hello. Hi. I'm right here. Okay, fine. You don't want to focus on me. That's fine. You don't care about me, camera. Whatever. I'm trying to promote myself more. And it's difficult. It's difficult because, you know, not that you care about this. Alpha channel. Oh my gosh, why am I doing this on stream? Stop it, Chris. It's difficult to promote ourselves as artists because, number one, we're so inundated with art or with people trying to sell us crap all the time. I mean, like, how many times do we get spammed calls constantly, or spam text messages, or spams on the stream trying to get people to get us to stuff? Oh, Dennis. Damn, I missed your live stream. I like the title anyway. We talk a bit about that, Dennis. Come on, focus, dude. Hello, I'm right here. There you go. Thank you. Thank you, camera, for focusing on me. I appreciate you. Yeah, we talked a little bit about discipline, minimums, and consistency. You have to watch it again, but it's something that I talk about like all the time. It's so important. But as I put the chrisbevan.com right there, I'm trying to promote myself, but I hate the shameless promotion. I hate being like sold to all the time, like buy this, buy that. So several ways if you like what I do, if you're interested in what I do, the most easiest way, like and subscribe on YouTube. I think next step up would be go to my website, sign up for my newsletter. Doesn't cost anybody anything, just your time and attention, which is important, super important. And these live streams are rambly. Is it going to be the best use of your time? Probably. If you're doing something else, like Matthew's probably painting right now, some awesome thing, or doing some work, I'm sure he is. And listen to the stream. Love your studio, Matthew. It's fantastic. It's gorgeous. So lucky. Jealous. So jelly. So the streams are rambly like I am right now, so it's not going to be a great use of your time. But to promote me, or to not promote me. Oh my gosh. My brain is so dead today because of partying too much last night. Having a lot of fun. Partying. I'm 50, right? Like, subscribe, go to my website, sign up for a newsletter. That's the next level. And then monetary support. Buy my paintings, things like that. I am starting up mastrius.com, mastrius.com. I'm going to be doing a mentorship there. $50 a month for mentorship. So if you're interested in that, I'll promote it on all my socials soon. I'm going to do that. And then, yeah, I am working on a learning platform on my website that's taking absolutely forever. And then if you live close to me, which is in Pueblo, Colorado, I'm going to be starting up classes at the Art Center here. The Sangre de Cristo Art Center is going to be doing, so getting part of the community. Going to be fantastic. Dennis says, I really enjoy the rambling, actually. Oh, you do? Good. Because I can ramble constantly throughout the whole thing. I would love to see, like whenever I edit these videos, you'll have like the imagery, and then right below is all the like the sound. Like it's constant. Like there's no pause. It's just me constantly. Just here's the fire hose vomit from me of everything that I know. And I enjoy it. I enjoy doing that. I was telling some friends yesterday, I was like, this is my outlet for being able to talk constantly, because I know me as a person, I could talk forever about anything and all the time. I just enjoy it. And in most scenarios, it's not good. But here, I think on streams, it's good. And the reason why I got into, doing a stream while I'm painting and talking all the time is because I was looking at other streamers on like gaming streams. And the ones that were the most interesting were the gamers that, even if they weren't gaming on anything, they were constantly had this discourse going on, talking about the game and how they felt about it, or what they were doing at the time, or things alternate to the game, other games, other things, their life, what's like, and it's interesting. It's more interesting in that aspect. It's kind of like a less directed podcast. And I feel like that's where it's at. It's like, podcasts have this like, theme that they go through, and an outline on each little things they go in, or they have like conversations between two people that can go into different ways. It's just a conversation between me and you, and most of the time me and the ether, right? But I think it is more interesting. At least I feel it is, right? So that's why I'm doing it. And there's 8+ billion people on this planet. And I feel like, I'm not super special, and there's a lot of other people out there that feel the same way as me, and maybe are here and enjoying it and responding. And that's great. It's fantastic. Definitely does feel like we're always being scammed. Yes, I hate it. I hate it. The way I want to run my business, my art business. And yes, it's got to be a business. I'm making paintings. I need to sell paintings. This is my job now. I'm a full-time artist now. I always want you, the patron, the viewer, the whatever, the person that I feel is very important, I always want you to win. You should always feel like you got the better end of the deal, no matter what. And in a world, like I'm starting some kind of like, in a world millions of light years away, and like some kind of sci-fi thing. Now in a world where, you know, it's everybody's like treating us humans as like, how much cattle can I get into my program? You know, and I don't care if they stay. It's kind of like LA Fitness, or, you know, the really bad fitness places where they don't even care if you're there. Actually, they make more money if you just pay monthly and you never show up. Like they do better that way. You know, that kind of thing. I hate that. Like, how many eyeballs can I get in here? That's our world right now. Like, how can I spam and trick people out of this? Like, give them crap. But no, I want, like, for example, like, I have a learning platform where I'm starting out at the base of just oil painting and just giving you everything I know from beginning to end. Like right now, I'm finishing editing a video about oil paint brands, like all the brands that I've ever used, my um, understanding of the viscosity and the pricing and the coloration and everything, and the comparison between the two, and my suggestions of what level you're at, what brands to buy, you know, all of this stuff. Like, that's the level I'm at right now, because it started out with, you know, intro, daily art, then brands, and then it's going to go into palettes. I got to edit, you know, palettes. I suggest colors to start out with, and then it'll be, you know, all materials, and then going into this whole process of beginning oil painting, starting oil painting, having a process to move through it. And there's a tendency within me as a person that's looking at, you know, the business of art making, and I'm like, well, I got to hold things back. But at the same time, I'm like, no, that's like the understanding that most of companies and corporations have today, is like, how can we always win on every single transaction? And I'm like, no, I would rather people go, and I get this a lot, especially with my artwork, because I sell my artwork inexpensively, intentionally. And they're always like, you need to raise your prices. It's ridiculous. It's too cheap. And I want that feeling to happen. I want people to go through it. And yeah, and I there'll be people that go through this and say, you know, I'm just going to take advantage of this and not pay anything for it. And why should I give Chris any money, and not respond with any kind of, you know, monetary response or whatever. And that's fine. You win all day long perfectly. That's fantastic. And to be that giving will always, I think, result in the majority of individuals seeing that, and the honesty and the maybe integrity within it, and the vulnerability within it, the authenticity within it, and saying, yeah, this is a person that I'm going to support in some way or another. That's my feeling of it. You talk to any other businessman or salesperson, and they go, you crazy. You know what you're doing. And yet I've seen so many other people, artists, Nicholas Uribe. Like, I love Nicholas Uribe. Like, go to his Patreon, pay him $10 a month for his Patreon. Look at his videos on YouTube. Oh, I've learned so much from him and his YouTube, and I went through his mentorship and supported him. I got his painting right here that I always look at. Oh, I want to buy all his artwork. He's that person that has like the same kind of mentality, and he's doing really well as an artist. He's so good. And it's all about, I want you, the person watching right now, the person that's seeing, to win, to always feel like you got the better end of the deal. Yeah. And we can get enough from that. Like I always say, I love this saying, if you always go for more, you'll never get enough. But if you get enough, you'll never need more. And we're in a society where everybody's wanting more. I mean, for reals, me rambling here still, still on here. I always do this. I'm going to end this stream and then I'm on here for another 30 minutes. If you're starting this art thing and you're thinking, you know, $1 million, $2 million home, Lamborghini, you know, vacations to everywhere around the world all the time, you're in the wrong place. I mean, these are luxury items, you know, that we're making here that the majority of people aren't going to spend a lot of money on, right? It's not a big business thing. It's something that its heart is in joy, and it's in preference, and it's in excitement, and it's in personal just fulfillment. Love that word still, Lee, that we were talking about earlier. Personal fulfillment. It's more all of that, all feeling that it is like this great business opportunity for making a bunch of money. You know, it's one of those things where I feel that I can't not do it. Even when I was doing nothing but web development and programming, it was still a creative act for me. Single thing I've ever done has always been like, how can I make this creative? Or I don't even have to think about it. It just kind of flows through. Like I'm doing yard work and it's so much fun. Like, oh, how can I landscape this a little bit, make it look really interesting? I made a catio for my cats. so much fun, so creative, like this creative thing that I'm in. It's not here for a lot of money. I'm doing it because I love it tremendously. And even on the days when I'm not feeling well, I'm still doing it because it's me. It's who I am. Yeah, Dennis, you know who Nicholas Uribe is. So he's one of those artists that you look at and you're like, you piss me off, you're so good. Piss me off, you're so good. Let me just do this little painting, Nicholas says. And then he's like bitching about how bad it is. And I'm like, dude, come on. So good. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I have to be very careful. I have to be very careful with my artwork. I'm so influenced by his work that I need to find my own language through like the ideals that Nicholas Uribe has, or else I'm going to be so referential, so exact that people are going to go, yeah, you're a copy of Nicholas Uribe. You know, Nicholas Uribe, not even 2.0, because that means it's better. No, it's not going to happen. You started watching him from the beginning. Yeah. You know, I started doing that, like going through his videos in this kind of like chronological order, which is great. You know, where he started with, and then going pretty far within that. But then, you know, I always get into this maybe too practical way of doing things. And then it starts to get boring because you're like, on to the next one. You know, it's a bit more fun to just like let them randomly come at you sometimes. And I'm always reminded of the book by, what's her name? Twyla Tharp. What's her book? I got it over there. I'm trying to see it. I think it's The Creative Act or The Creative Habit by Twyla Tharp. And she was talking about, it's a wonderful book, fantastic book. She was talking about like enjoying go at this thing in a chronological way where we say, okay, I'm going to learn all about Van Gogh, like read the book. Let's start with before he was born and move to his death. Like that's where we go through. And she was like, you know, I love reading books by authors in an archaeological way where she would start with the latest book and then go back in time. And I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Like starting with that latest part and then understanding where that's at and then seeing the previous one and going, oh, I see, you know, how the progression happened. Pretty interesting. Yeah. Just a fun way of, you know, looking at our tendencies as art as humans, I guess, in a different way. I don't know. I'm going off on tangents. Tangent City. We're on the Tangent bus going to Tangent City, down Tangent Road, onto a different tangent state. Okay. It's time to go. I will see you tomorrow. I'm going to continue working on this painting. Hopefully I'll look at it throughout the day, make some, some ideas will spark in my brain of how to move through it the next day. It's like what I always say, I enjoy having the on and off time in a painting, on and off, and you're deep into it, then you're in the reflection of it, deep into it, then in the reflection of it. Helps you move through a painting. Thank you guys so much. Dennis says, agree, man. He really is great. Yes, he is. Fantastic. Yeah. Just give him money. Support him, please. He's awesome. Okay. Thank you guys. Appreciate you. Thanks for staying here during all of my rambling. I appreciate it. I will see you tomorrow, hopefully. Not sure what time. Have a wonderful rest of your day. It's Monday. Got a whole week ahead of us. Gonna be a fantastic week. Bye-bye.